Warning. The following show features reviews from wildly unprofessional critics operating without the supervision of professionals. The thoughts and opinions held by these individuals are not to be taken seriously and do not come from a place of intellectual integrity. This show doesn't reflect the opinions of Criticless or its users. Viewer discretion is advised. What's up? What's up? What is up, everybody? Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Criticless Cast. Not exactly fully unhinged, but still live with just me, because we switched things up today a little bit. We might be trying this from time to time on the weeks when the boys are a little busy or when we just want to take a little bit of a break, where I can just review things by myself. So today we are actually going to be reviewing the new film Locked. I had confused everyone within our Criticless Cast group saying that I was going to be doing the new film Warfare, and then I was totally wrong about that because I couldn't get tickets because they're not actually screening it yet because the internet lied to me. But anyways, this new film Locked is starring Bill Skarsgård, and it's actually directed by the guy that did Brightburn, that came out quite some time ago, and actually a Netflix original as well. So I wasn't actually even realizing that that was who did this movie, but it's basically Bill Skarsgård trapped in a car for an hour and a half. But this is kind of along the lines of what a lot of people have been asking for, which is these shorter films that are just on an interesting concept but aren't, these overhyped, over budgeted things. And especially coming off of last week with the Electric State, something like this seems to be along the lines of more of what people are wanting. But this is going to be, I'm going to try and stick to our regular format and what we normally do. So that's at least my goal here, and we'll see how it goes. But we've already got some of you guys popping into the chat. Obviously, slipping into the void is in here. Matt, what's going on, buddy? And Planet X back again with a $5 saying cool. It is cool, man. It's just me. It's cool. And we'll make it work. And Taylor's up in here too. So, and he actually asked, is this movie considered woke at all? And I will get into that a little bit later, but I will go ahead and tease early on that I technically don't think so. And actually on a Criticless scale, I would even consider this film slightly right, if that is a little bit of a teaser for what we're getting into with this movie. I was a bit surprised. Now, granted, I don't know that it fully pays off on that slightly rightness of the film, but I'll get into it more with the actual review. And we've got Crisco in here as well saying, hello, what's up, homie? How's it going? But I'm glad you guys decided to hop in for a little bit and say hello. But I did want to go ahead and kick off with our new segment that we've been doing lately, which is where I just kind of peruse the internet, and with my accusations of being a TikTok kid and staying up to date with all the things that the youths are up to, I have started kind of looking around to see what I was going to talk about today. And I actually think that I decided to touch in on this whole thing about the astronauts landing and getting brought back after being stuck out in space for forever. And but actually, I don't really want to talk about that event itself. What I actually want to talk about is how apparently the TikTok sphere and the internet seems to be of the idea that this might actually be not real. So I'll go ahead and show, if you weren't aware, basically some astronauts got stuck out in space for a long time. It happened during the Biden administration, or at least that's what's claimed to have happened. And then Trump and all of them brought them back. Okay, so here's the initial video.
And splashdown. Crew 9 back on Earth.
All right, so people instantly started analyzing this
Dragon
video.
Freedom has returned home with NASA astronauts Nick Hague, Sonny Williams, Butch Wilmore, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov. They're back on Earth after approximately 17 hours of a return journey from space.
All right, so a 17-hour return journey from space. Now, the stuff that I'm getting into is people started really analyzing it and looking at all of the things. Now, if you know anything about me, I'm very conspiracy-minded. I will entertain all sorts of ludicrous things that other people won't. So I'll go ahead and preface it by saying that. I have some weird speculations and things when it comes to space, and this is coming from someone who has a family member who is actually, or was, quite high up in NASA and is also very cagey about certain NASA things. So anyways, here's another video as far as the conspiracy.
Well, you know, I was up in space for about 9 months, never wore a helmet once. Once I got back down to Earth, I had to put that plastic thing on. Don't want that oxygen to fucking kill me, you know what I mean? Hell, it's 2025 out here, and we're wearing Spirit Halloween astronaut costumes. Doesn't even have a port entry for fucking any wires or fucking air, anything. How about the new boots? They're actually separate boots from the fucking white pleather suit she has on.
Yeah, so what do we think about this? There's a zipper on these boots and possibly even the pants, and it's supposed to be a spacesuit. So,
With a fucking zipper. So if the door perhaps flies open while you're in space, your butthole's gonna fly through your fucking pant leg. Also, you may want to put the plastic shield down so it actually looks like an authentic fucking picture.
Yeah.
Well,
So, the speculation continues with all of this. Yes, Banjo says a space cosplayer, and that seems to be what a lot of people think. And a lot of folks are accusing this entire space operation of basically just being a money laundering psyop sort of situation. Now, there was some other accusations as well with this.
So here's Butch and Sunita. You notice how she's got her beautiful gray hair coming in? You notice how Butch has stubble? Yeah. And look, they're coming back, being greeted. Return home after major delay. Look, Sunita got her roots done in space.
All right. Now, I've seen all sorts of clearly AI created videos on TikTok and elsewhere of people claiming that basically they get supplies sent up there to where they can dye their hair, and they regularly do these sorts of things, which to me sounds absolutely absurd and ridiculous that we would spend resources to send hair dye to people in space so that when they land, they can look better or be able to be more presentable to the people in the spaceship thing that they're in. That in itself is a little odd to me.
Look, Butch cut his hair in space. Interesting, huh? Isn't it interesting that you could be in space for 9 months and your gray hairs are gone? And then your stubble, we just showed in the last frame, is now gone. They're trimming their fucking hair on the Space Center, and no wonder they couldn't get back, because they got hairs in the drains, in the clogs. You know what I mean?
Anyways, clogged drains. Yeah. So that, I don't know. Very interesting that they would go to all that effort for when they're coming back. As far as with the suits and stuff, it is weird that there's no ports or anything special unless there's some kind of very special suit for only coming back, which also seems a little odd. But, and even still, I don't know why it wouldn't. That just also seems odd. Now, the thing with the zippers could be technically maybe there's a sealed suit that's the white portion, but then the actual boots themselves just come off and on, but there's another boot inside of the boot. Maybe. I don't know. I'd be interested to hear y'all's thoughts on that. But this is the other really big thing that gets me, gets my speculation going here.
Hive Moderation AI. I have just uploaded the video of the Dragon capsule landing in the ocean because I'm convinced that it is AI generated. Hive Moderation detects AI generated video. So let's see what it comes up with. And 18 minutes later, here is our result. Overall, the video is likely to contain AI generated or deepfake content.
So that right there, that's what kind of gets me. And they are starting to do a lot of these deepfake AI searches on these scanning tools on a lot of different things, and they're coming up as being deepfaked. And supposedly they have also done this with the moon landing, and it was like 100%. This is not real footage. These are miniatures used, all this stuff. So also another thing to to speculate on there. So I thought all of this was pretty interesting. This is definitely the rabbit hole that people are currently going down right now. As far as at least the conspiracy space, there's not really any cultural things happening this week, at least. As far as I'm concerned, there's a lot of like celebrities doing press and junkets and things for stuff that they're going to be on, but no real big events as far as that goes. But all of this really just was pretty interesting to me, and I am curious to see if that we'll never know. That's the thing. We'll never know if any of this was faked or if anything was wonky with it. And so we'll see. I don't know. The jury's out, but I don't trust NASA. We'll just put it that way. Don't trust them, and not on board with a lot of the narratives. But who knows? Maybe Trump did save these guys, and they weren't just in a Hollywood basement somewhere. Maybe. So we are going to, like I said, continue business as usual. So the first thing I'm going to do is cover some news. and then I guess the smart thing to do would be to share actually what I plan on talking about, which is not actually locked right now. It is going to be that I am talking about, first of all, what's going on over at Apple and these streaming services. Now, part of why I wanted to talk about this, well, for one, is that Severance is on right now. I'm going to be talking about it very slightly in a little bit, but the whole thing here is that all of these streaming services seem to be spending epic truckloads of money that they aren't making back. Like this article points out that Apple is losing over 1 billion per year on its streaming service, but has 45 million subscribers, which is wild. And it seems like this is the case with all of these things, and they just kind of seem to be kind of kept afloat in really odd ways. And I got in some conversations with some people recently about the electric state and why they think that a lot of the backlash is actually really happening is actually due to the fact that basically people are just really mad about Netflix prices constantly going up. But then with those prices constantly going up, them spending truckloads of money on movies that don't quite meet snuff, even if they're not terrible, people are basically, it's kind of the speaking with your wallet type of a thing that they're supposedly doing with also their reviews and their opinions, which is lashing out against the company, and the films are just taking the brunt of it. But I digress with the whole electric state thing. That's not really what this was about, but just this news in general is really, really crazy. It says the tech giant is spending around 4.5 billion on content annually, down from its 5 billion in past years. And so that is a truckload of money. Now it says, of course, 1 billion in annual losses are practically a rounding error for Apple in the context of its overall business, which is mostly fueled by iPhone sales. Apple generated 391 billion in revenue and posted a net profit of 93.7 billion for its fiscal year ended in 2024. But either way, it's clear that these companies do see these streaming services as an asset to bring people over, bring them into their sphere. And with Apple, it kind of even makes more sense because they have this device. And if they are giving any kind of benefit for people that use Apple devices, I don't. So I don't even know if those people get any kind of benefit, anything cheaper than what I already do. And I will say that Apple's quality of their content is substantially higher than the likes of Netflix and some other places. So there is that, which I do find interesting, the fact that Apple does seem to be putting out better things, and I wonder really what that correlates with. But either way, this is a lot of money that is being lost, especially for the fact that they have 45 million Apple TV Plus subscribers. So I'm not quite sure what everybody's thoughts are on this, or if they think that they should pull back. But it's like they mention a lot of the good shows, and actually Normie brought up Silo, which I also think is an excellent show, and they brought up some others here like The Morning Show, Severance, Bad Sisters, Slow Horses, Disclaimer, Presumed Innocent, Hijack Loot, Palm Royale, Masters of the Air. There are some really good ones in there, and actually multiple of the ones that I think are good ones they didn't even list in this. And then they've also been putting out the movies and stuff. So there are good things happening over at Apple, but this is really wild, and we keep seeing more and more of this sort of thing happening in Hollywood. Now, with this next piece of news here, Split Faction movie is already in the works, and there is a bidding war for the rights to adapt this video game. This is nuts because this video game literally just came out this past week. People are saying that it's one of the best video games in years, and it's fantastic and amazing. I really want to play it, and I have not yet, but this is one of these games that's made for two people to play together. It's very much a co-op experience. They want to lean back into that couch co-op or just playing with friends thing. But the fact that it is already in a bidding war and this has happened this fast is really, really wild. So it says that sources at Game Developers Conference in San Francisco have confirmed that media company Story Kitchen, and it's the same company that did the game It Takes Two, which is also supposedly very good. And I played a little bit of it. My kids actually played it. And they're already apparently working on a film project of that over at Amazon. They said they're putting together the film's cast, writers, and director into a package as offers for the rights keep coming in from multiple top Hollywood studios. So they are clearly really legitimately bidding this out. And what is really wild is that they're planning on bundling things like cast and even writer and director already into this instead of just selling it as a script, which is really nuts because, I mean, they clearly don't have a full script. Granted, there's a lot of things that are going to be relatively there and in place with the actual with the game itself. But still, this is just a really fast turnaround. And we know how a lot of these adaptations go. They are very hit or miss, more often than not miss. But I thought that this was just kind of wild that this has happened this fast. The game has just come out and we've already got news of a movie being made. But I mean, it makes sense. We've got female leads, we've got the diversity thing going on, but also it's a game that people like and are saying is a good game. And so I mean, it does tick off those Hollywood boxes in an easy way, and it sounds like the game itself isn't super political, so they shouldn't have to do any of that mess with the movie itself, especially when it seems like Hollywood is maybe pulling back from it a bit. And Crisco hopped in here and said it's barely 3 weeks old. Great game though. So yeah, and so it is 3 weeks old, and I thought it was even like a week old. So still, either way, this is bonkers and just really downright pretty crazy news. And I mean, good on them. I mean, this company is going to make some money, and it seems like they're making plenty of things happening. You know, they're making a lot of moves here, and this will make them able to make more games and continue to go on doing that, being that they're making good money on the game and the show as well. And slipping into the void said, "Watch the race swap." Yeah, because it's not going to be a it's not going to be a gender swap. We know that. So I am curious to see what they do about this. It's going to be interesting. They'll hopefully just keep it the same, and everybody will be happy anyways. So last little piece of news here that I wanted to talk about is the Toxic Avenger footage that came out. I totally missed it. But basically, we actually can see the Toxic Avenger now and know what he looks like. This is a Toxic Avenger played by Peter Dinklage. I talked about this movie like a year ago on this channel, and it's gotten lost in purgatory, and they filmed it. It screened forever ago at one of the horror festivals, and people saw it, said they really enjoyed it, and then it just vanished from the face of the earth. There were people claiming that it was too edgy, too over the top, too ridiculous. And like I said, they have released. It is definitely edgy and ridiculous, and it's very violent. This is very much a not safe for work video that I was debating on playing, but I don't think I'm going to. But just know that there's a lot of language and murder involved. I'll put the link in the show notes, or you can find it elsewhere. But I'm excited to announce, if you have not heard, that this is actually coming out. They have an announcement for it on August 29th. So we are going to get to see this movie. And 90s people are probably pretty familiar with this, and 80s, because this came out in 84. And then we got a cartoon years later that I watched as a kid. This was this weird habit that Hollywood had where they would actually put out cartoon versions of R-rated movies like RoboCop and all sorts of things, where they would just make it kind of kid-friendly and make a cartoon out of it. And I think that's really wild. But we are literally 40 years past the original film, and we have this one, and it's done by Macon Blair, who is a really solid director, and I'm a fan of. And I'm curious to see. They say Dinklage's character really does knock someone's jaw off with a mop, and it's weird, and it's got hypersexualized fast food conversations happening in it. And so all of that is interesting. And Gary Banjo is saying the toxic midget, which is, yeah, it's really weird because the original character was not a little person midget, whatever you want to call him. It was the Dink is an interesting choice for this movie. But actually, with hearing his voice, we all know he's got this deeper gravelly voice. It worked fairly well, at least in the little bit of a trailer where you hear him talk, from what we saw. And I think he looks pretty cool. They're going very kind of campy with how he looks, which I also like. So all of this seems like a good sign. I hope it's great. And the fact that we have Elijah Wood in this as a villain makes me really excited. He looks really greasy and gross. They've released some images of him as well. So I'm pretty excited about that. I really want to see Elijah Wood as bad guy. I love everything he does. But August 9th, we don't have to wait too terribly long. We're going to be able to see this, and you better bet we will have a review on this channel for it, because I am a fan of all of the old like trauma movies or trauma, however you say it. And I know that Matt has watched a lot of them and is into them too. So this will be a fun one to check out and do. The very last thing I wanted to touch on is what's happening with old Snow White. things are not looking too hot. This movie came out technically last night. We already have 19 voters, and as far as I can tell, everything seems pretty on the up and up as far as the people that have reviewed it. We've got Drunk 3PO in here giving it a 15%. He's got a video. You can check all this out on Criticless. He gave it a 15%, though, saying that it is awful. And this seems to be what everyone's saying, is that it's terrible all the way around. He says it's too long. CGI dwarves are terrible because that was done way after the fact and they had to redo a bunch of stuff. So yeah, we've got a lot of boguses in here. We've got technically a 0 here, but Was It Good saw it. We regularly have him pop in and say hi and different things. He gave it a 10%, and he's very fair, I think, and I tend to be on board with a lot of his opinions on things, and we seem to be in the same realm relatively. And he's basically just saying that this was even worse than he could have imagined from the sounds of it, and it just trashes the original film and story and doesn't respect it. Now, we do have one high score here of a 60%, which is pretty impressive from CMB Jive. That's pretty high. Now, granted, it's just on that rad cusp, but basically they said that they were pleasantly surprised by the movie and thought that it was going to be way worse than it was. Now, one thing I keep hearing is that Rachel Ziegler's singing is quite good, but everybody's saying that Gal Gadot's performance is very bad and just not worth seeing. But we've got another 5%, 0%, 4% by Jonas Campbell. We've got D-Day Cobra, Jeremy in here with a 10%, dropped his video. He literally says nothing but fuck this movie. And I did watch his video. He, from what I gather, actually walked out. He said he was so angry and mad about it. So yes, caveat ties, it did come out last night. And yeah, normally touching on his review as well here by Jeremy. But yeah, then we've got Rhombus here with 19, another 19 by OMB Reviews. I'm not surprised by this from him. I definitely would have expected him to not like this, but he is also fair and will give credit where credit is due if it had actually been good. And he basically, talks about things like problematic writing that they cut from it and all these new songs and just being bad and all around just not being a good time. So Crisco, also regular reviewer in here, gave it a 30%. And so this is a nap on it as well with a 15. So yeah, this is not doing good, and I don't think it's going to continue to do much better. Now, granted, this is your hardcore film crew here who's reviewing things early, and caveat, yeah, I did get your sarcasm. I hear you. There are going to be a lot of people who are wondering kind of the same or pretending like it never happened. But yeah, it's man, 19 voters already at a 13%. We'd have to have a slew of your regular folks going to see this to really bring the score up, but it is not looking good. And Disney kind of gets what they deserve with this movie. I'm not really surprised, but it is a bummer because I know that a lot of people really love Snow White, and this is just another failure from Disney and the things that they've been doing of late. But I'm going to go ahead and touch really quickly on some things that I've been watching, and then we're going to get into what you guys all came for, which is the review. So let's go ahead and kick things off. All right, so I am using, admittedly, IMDb here because it's the only way that I could keep up with all these tabs and not have to search things while I'm talking. So the three things that I'm planning on just really touching in on and saying that I was watching, and I've mentioned other places, is Severance, Shrinking, and Mythic Quest, which brings me back to what I was talking about earlier, which is the Apple TV Plus situation and all their money that they're spending. I am watching 3 shows, all of which are very good, and am really happy with them. I'm not done with any of these seasons yet, but I have 1 episode to go on Severance. I'm so excited to watch it there at the season finale. And actually, just a second ago, a thing popped up on the season or up on the screen where they have officially announced today that we are getting a season 3. If we were not getting a season 3, I'm pretty sure that people's heads would explode, and at the very least they would be begging for a book to close out this story. If you don't know anything about it, it's a very kind of enigmatic, very meta type of show, and it's it's a wild show to talk about, and you can't even talk about season 2 without knowing what happened in season 1. But basically, people can turn their brains off and become a different person when they are at work. So there's a work self, home self, and then they don't have to deal with work. But there's a lot of sketchy things. There's some culty business. It's a very wild story, and it's directed by Ben Stiller, stars Adam Scott, and a lot of other people. Highly recommend it. I'm really excited to watch the finale, and I've made it up to this point. So, and everything I've heard is that the finale is very good, and they answer a good chunk of questions while also giving us some more and leaving some things unanswered. So that's fine with me. That's on par. And as long as we're getting to season 3, then I'm good. But Shrinking, the show that I've talked about as well with Jason Segel and Harrison Ford about him being a shrink, and they are psychiatrists. And basically he takes a very against the rules, against the books kind of an approach to being a therapist. And he decides to just start telling the truth to his patients. And so it's very fun. And it's, you deal with the grumpy Harrison Ford being Harrison Ford, and I think it's a lot of fun. I've gotten some good laughs. I still think the first season is probably the best season, but it doesn't mean that you should quit watching it. I'm still enjoying it. It's hard to find good half-hour comedies that are just easy and breezy while also having some meat on their bones. This is one of those shows. If you have Apple TV Plus, highly recommend it. And then Mythic Quest as well. I've been touching in. I'm not watching it nonstop or binging it. I'll just pop in every day or so and watch an episode. So I'm getting pretty far in on this current season, which is season 4, and I'm having a good time with it. And it's still on brand with a lot of the Rob McElhenney type stuff. But I will say that this tiptoes a little too close to some of the woke things, as far as some of the subject matter and whatnot that they're getting a little deeper into. And I say that the show isn't that, but I just mean that there feels like a weird focus on some of that stuff that I don't really care about. And it's kind of ho-hum, and there's a relationship of this lesbian couple that's I find to be an absolute bore. And so there's that as well. But I don't know. We'll see. That I'm stuck on some episodes that keep focusing on them, and I'm ready for the other stuff. But I still think it's a good show. Still think it's worth watching. And the other 3 seasons were quite good, and the first one being fantastic as well. So I think it's, on par with what it has been doing. But really not a whole lot else I've been watching lately. I've been taking it pretty easy. So I am going to go ahead and, like I said, get into what everybody came here for, which is to talk about Locked. So let's go ahead and kick off our spoiler-free convo / review of Locked. All right. So I saw Locked literally quite a few minutes ago, not long, like an hour tops. And I have not seen a trailer for this. I did not know anything about it whatsoever outside of him being locked in a car. And so the synopsis here, as far as, or the overview that is in Criticless, says that when Eddie breaks into a luxury SUV, he steps into a deadly trap set by William, a self-proclaimed vigilante delivering his own brand of twisted justice with no means of escape. Eddie must fight to survive in a ride where escape is an illusion, survival is a nightmare, and justice shifts into a high gear. So, man, this is a type of movie that there are other movies that kind of exist in this that have been this type of film that I've seen before, and I instantly started thinking about them as the movie was chugging along, and I'll touch on those in just a second. But what I do want to touch back on is who directed this and the other things surrounding it, which is, like I said, is that Bill Skarsgård is in this, and Anthony Hopkins is in this as well. And then we have this young actress, Ashley, and basically that's the cast. These 3, and really it's only these 2. It's Bill Skarsgård and Anthony Hopkins. That is what this movie is, straight up, like at its core. That's what this is. And so I just so you know what you're getting into, this is a person trapped in a situation movie, and they really lean into that. If you have seen movies like Buried, which starred Ryan Reynolds, this is a really good comparison. Also, the exact same length as this movie, an hour and 35 minutes. And they have now, this is where I find things interesting. This one, Buried, is labeled as a drama, thriller, mystery. Locked is billed as a thriller horror, and if you look on IMDb, they literally only have it down as a horror, at least did a day or so ago. This movie is a thriller. It is not a horror film in any type of way. It's just not. It's not a horror movie. This is a thriller, and a drama / mystery could even be, but less mystery, honestly, even just a drama thriller. But Buried wasn't too bad. I saw it back in the day. It's not your typical Ryan Reynolds performance, which is refreshing, considering that over the past few years, we just watch Ryan Reynolds being Ryan Reynolds endlessly over and over and over again. That's not what this movie was, but it's just Ryan Reynolds buried underground, trapped in a coffin. Then we had a movie called Frozen, which we have some reviews for as well in Criticless, which is also that hour 33-minute marker. It seems like that is the sweet spot for this type of movie. And this one starred Shawn Ashmore, so you at least one notable face. And a lot of people liked this one. We have 200s in here, a 60 and a 59 from Divosaurus. So but I think most people by and large liked this one. And so if you have seen Locked and you're kind of in the mood for more of that afterwards, some of these movies might be a good place to go. Buried is streaming several places as well, too. So these movies are all places you can find. And the last one that I wanted to touch on that this reminded me of is 127 Hours. Now, this was based on a true story, also hour and 34 minutes. Man, there's a pattern here that I'm seeing, and it totally makes sense. This one's streaming on Hulu. This was a big one back when it came out. It starred James Franco and Kate Mara. I remember seeing it in theaters. Super intense. Basically about a hiker who was trapped out in the desert where his arm got trapped in a rock. Now we have 4 reviews here, 2 50-somethings and 2 60-something and 70-something. So people were so on this. I remember liking it fairly well, but these movies are kind of intense. They make your hands sweat, and they're just that type of movie, if you know what I mean. But Locked is in the vein of those films so that you know what you're getting into. It's very much that, but I will say that compared to the others, being that it is a singular location film, this one actually does things that that we don't see as much in this genre, which is that being that it's in a car, the single location can change its setting, which is something we rarely see in these movies. Also, a lot of the times these type of films don't like to show other people in other places. There is a tiny bit of that as well. So this movie does have some variety in there to keep it going along, whereas a lot of the films of this type don't do that. So that is something that I appreciated. Now we get a large chunk of time where it is just in the car, in the location where it was known for. But there's more going on here. So essentially, without getting too deep into spoilers, it's basically just that Anthony Hopkins is the person that they're considering the self-proclaimed vigilante who's delivering his own brand of twisted justice. So that's the role that Anthony Hopkins plays, and I think that very few people could pull off this role in the way that Anthony Hopkins does in this movie. I think if other people had played it, it might have come off as a bit cheap or hammy or goofy because of some of the odd kind of things that this character says, but it totally works being Anthony Hopkins with his voice and his delivery. It just works. As we know, Bill Skarsgård, regardless of the movie, he will show up. The movie might be bad around him, but he's going to put in 110%. I think he definitely did this here. There is some stuff with the cinematography and the way that the movie was filmed that I thought was fantastic, and it looked really great. It just was kind of unexpected because when you think about it, it's like if you're video here and it shows the car, it was a very interesting vehicle that they decided to use, which is this electric car, which allows them to play into modern technology and what cars can do and how you would be able to lock a person in a car if you're kind of putting all of that together as far as all of that goes. I don't know that I'd watch the trailer for this. Like I said, I have never seen it, but hopefully that I don't tease too much. But essentially we have our lead character here with Bill Skarsgård, and he is just kind of this punk, and he's this guy who is doing petty crimes and essentially decides to rob the wrong car. And all we know is that this character William, played by Anthony Hopkins, he kind of has an axe to grind, and he's trying to bring justice to a broken city and a broken society. There were things in this movie that really surprised me with the script. They really get into some current political things, and with William's character, it's an interesting approach because technically he is the bad guy, but this anti-hero type of character. But he essentially really calls out how our modern society has just given crime a pass and given criminals a pass and letting them get away with things. There's a lot of very conservative ideals that are being reflected with Anthony Hopkins' character, which I was not expecting. We don't see a lot in Hollywood. And then being that Bill Skarsgård's character is trapped in this car and he's trying to basically teach him a lesson. I don't think that any of this is really spoiler territory here, but basically he is just trying to, he is there to be punished. And so basically he gets stuck in the car and you go through this journey. It's not too long, like I said, and it's an hour and a half long. But at the end of the day, my opinions and thoughts on this movie, I keep kind of bouncing around because I don't think that this is a most excellent film as far as a critical scale goes. It's not all the way up in here. I think it is somewhere in this rad territory, probably somewhere in the lower 60s for me, because I think that the payoff itself had a little bit of problems. And I think that the movie, while trying to say certain things about some of these political elements, they did kind of just walk it back. They didn't really fully pay off on some of the stuff that they were kind of teasing as far as some of the cultural and societal issues that William had. And I think that they did a good job of pointing it out. And they even let the other character with Eddie kind of argue back and forth while he's trapped in this car going through absolute hell. And there is this good back and forth, but it doesn't get the payoff that I think it deserved. And Sin's Corner has already reviewed it as well. She gave it a 67%, and I think that is actually quite a solid score, and not too far off from where I was saying that I would put this movie. I don't think it is bad by any means. This is kind of one of those, like, you catch on streaming and you're like, hey, I just want to watch something like kind of easy for a bit here and just stick it on and have a little bit of a thriller, and I want to see Anthony Hopkins do his thing along with Skarsgård, then why not? It's not going to be wasted time. But I do think that there will be some of those folks that over hyper analyze and nitpick due to the fact that certain things aren't answered. But it's actually something that I liked about this movie, because instantly you're going to think about the fact of, hey, there's this car, someone's trapped in it. Why would no one on the outside notice? And I think that they do a good job of calling attention to some of the things, but then also just being like, look, this man's planned it all out. Don't hyperanalyze it. He would have done things to make sure that this went off in a successful way in which you would expect. He is kind of this Punisher-esque character almost, as far as his motivations and his mindset, where he's like, look, the law doesn't do what it needs to do, so I'm going to do it. I'm this relatively jaded older man, and I ain't got nothing to lose anymore, and I'm a smart dude, and I can execute this. And they really lean into that well, to where you believe that he would have pulled this off properly, but they don't sit there and hold your hand and explain every last thing of how it all works, how he set it all up. They just kind of surface level give you some of those explanations. So you have to be okay with that and not just nitpick and hyperanalyze it, because it's just, there's a chance you're not going to have any fun with it. So some of those types of folks, there is a strong chance that they will kind of rip this up because of the fact that he doesn't, they don't bludgeon you over the head with explainers. And Matt here said, sounds like a Jigsaw light, which yeah, it's not far off. And it is interesting the way this is executed as far as how they handle it, because of the fact of the car being able to go places. I will say, versus some of these other movies like Buried and Frozen, there is more that happens. There is even some shocking violence in a few bits that I was actually surprised about. And that was kind of my biggest complaint with it, is that those moments of shocking violence and like really intense moments, we could have gotten more of them, because it was so intense. It was so visceral. I was like, holy crap, this director can pull this off. Oh, let's get more of this. But we don't. And that was a bit of a letdown for me, because they could have leaned into some more of the violence and some more of those like real serious thriller elements and that horror thing that they are alluding to, which I don't think it really is at all. So, but still, those moments I thought were great. I just think that by the end, the payoff wasn't quite what I wanted, and it didn't quite land the way that I would have liked for it to. But I will commend it for at least touching in on some of the social things that a lot of Hollywood is afraid to even talk about or touch on. So like I said, for me, this is somewhere in the 60s. It is not a bad movie. I could see a lot of people even putting it in the decent. But as far as a heinous or bogus, unless, like I said, you're one of these people that nitpicks things to death and you want every last thing explained for you, you'll probably be in the decent and up. Now, I don't think we're probably going to get a ton of most excellence or many at all, simply because of kind of how they structured this, and it was just lacking in a few areas that I think most people will probably agree on. Now, As far as our Criticless scales here, graphic language, there is a ton of language. Like there's a lot of F-bombs in this. There's a lot of swearing. As far as the violence, though, I'd say a bit more because there is a lot of blood and there are some moments that happen that are very visceral. But at the same time, it's not so bad that it's like, you know, if you're one of these people that gets nauseated by violence or whatever, that you're going to have a huge issue with it. There's a couple intense moments, and that's what it is. And then Skarsgård gets bloodied up a lot, which I don't want to get too much into. Now, as far as nudity, sexual content, not really. You see Skarsgård in his undies, but that's it. As far as political bias, like I said, there was a point in which where the film was where I would have actually ranked this in the slightly right category, and there's a part of me that still kind of wants to, because of the fact that they did cover some more conservative ideals about where we are in this country and around the world with crime and people getting a pass, getting allowed to get away with things, and our police forces being, and honestly, even more so, our legal system being neutered to a degree in which they can't really take care of the problems that need to be taken care of. So I still kind of think it might actually be that slightly right perspective. As far as family friendliness, absolutely not. No, I mean, older teens would be fine. Not even, like 16 or so would be totally fine to watch this. Entertainment value, I'd say a bit more to a lot. It is pretty engaging, and I didn't get bored. And that hour and a half marker there was, I think, really fair and a good spot to put it. So no real complaints from that. I am going to go ahead and save this as a draft, which is something you can do on Criticless yourself, is save drafts. If you start to work on something and you're not ready to drop it yet, you don't have to. So you can do that as well. And I'll go ahead and back out. It will save that where I left it. But so now I have a draft in here. And actually, as well, I will point out for some of you guys, you might notice over here in the corner, if you can pick this out, we actually have updated our logos here. You will see on certain content creators, which mine is, and now granted, I know I'm not like a big time content creator, but I'm on certain big shows and whatnot. But either way, I created this app, so suck it. But yeah, we have a badge here that we had some content creators wanted us to have because they like the lightning bolts, but they still wanted the megaphone. So if our content creators pay us just to support us, then they get this special little badge here. And I might even give them a few extra perks. But so we did implement this actually today on web only. It'll appear on the app later on. But as far as my final verdict on Locked, I think it is a fairly solid thriller. It honestly hangs around where I would put things like Buried and Frozen. I don't think it's quite as good as 127 Hours, at least personally, but I do think it was a pretty good film. I thought that the performances from Skarsgård and Hopkins were really good. It's interesting that Skarsgård was an executive producer on this. Actually, the other big thing that I do not see on here that they are really marketing is that this is actually being produced by Sam Raimi, which was one of the things that had me the most interested about it. When I see Sam Raimi's name on things, I'm like, let's freaking go. I want to see Sam. So the things that he thinks are impressive. So him being a producer on this does speak pretty well for it. But yeah, all the performances were good. This is a very it's the type of performances that you'd expect from these guys. And I will say in these types of movies, sometimes you never see certain people because of it being locked in a place. I don't really even think this is a spoiler, but like you do get to see some of Hopkins. You don't just get, the man on the phone or whatever the case may be, like with these other movies. There is some Hopkins in here more than just on a phone. So thought all that was cool, but it just didn't fully stick the landing, so it's not a most excellent. But I think if you could catch this on like a matinee or some kind of easy to watch, whether it's streaming or whatever, then do it. Totally watch it. It's not a bad film, and I do not regret seeing it. And I'm much happier that I saw this than the likes of Snow White, considering what everyone is saying about that one. So I think that this is along the lines of what a lot of people have been talking about for us to get more of out of Hollywood. And I do find it funny, in all honesty, that people make a lot of these complaints about what Hollywood's putting out, but then they don't go and watch a lot of these indies and these smaller films that are taking risks, that are doing interesting things. They only like to attack the big stuff because really they want things to reform in the large film space, which I understand, but also there's still plenty of great stuff coming out when it comes to these more indie films. They're doing really interesting things, and some of my most favorite movies of this year and last year are actually in this indie space, where I did my upcoming movies of this year, and so far most of these have been duds. But I did, as many know, I did like Electric State. I did slightly inflate my score a little bit just out of spite, but I'd still put it in the most excellent either way. But a lot of these others, like Mickey 17, total dud. But I don't even have Locked on here, you know, and it's at least a rat, which speaks a lot. And then if we even talk about some of the things from last year, it's like the things that were among my favorite movies were indies. So I would just say that for a lot of folks, what they might want to do is actually watch some of these indies that are going under the radar and support them. And maybe we'll get more from that space and the likes of these indie studios than, you know, chugging out some of the crap that they've been putting out. And like with this 2024 movies ranked, I mean, Skarsgård was in my number one with Boy Kills World last year. And then obviously we had another indie in there with Heretic. And so, I mean, I have a lot of indie movies on here, and there were a lot of successes with that type of thing. So I am curious by the end of the year where Locked will sit, but it's not going to be at the tip top. But I would say check it out if you want to see it, and you can see it on the cheap or on streaming. But it was not a disappointment. But guys, being that this is a solo show, it's just me. I pretty much plowed through everything really quickly, and I think I'm going to wrap things up. That pretty much covers all of it, but I do really appreciate you guys hopping into the chat and just kind of contributing, giving me some stuff to bounce off of, as always, with Caveat Ties and Normie and my wife in here and Slipping to the Void. All you guys, thanks for hopping in, and all of the others like Banjo and folks that were in here earlier. So yeah, this was a solid film. I don't regret it, and I'm curious to see what everybody else thinks. And if anybody else is actually going to end up seeing this, definitely let us know down in the comments and all of that, or if this maybe swayed you one way or another. I mean, obviously, this is a light time for the movies, and I think next week is also going to be kind of indies and stuff as well, so it might be another light week. I don't know if we'll go this route and do this or something else, but I'm glad I went and watched it, and I'll it might stick with me for a little bit at least, because I'm kind of freaked out about modern cars and the fact that they have as much control as they can. Like recently we have a newer car, and I opened a door and tried to go in reverse with the door open, and the car was like, absolutely not. You can't go in reverse because the door is open. And I was like, that is ridiculous. I want to go backwards. And I couldn't figure out how to do it. And then I found out that the way that the car actually works is it turns the parking brake on. And so I was able to turn the parking brake off and go backwards, but then it just beeps at you like a lunatic, telling you to like close the door and buckle your seatbelt. But either way, new cars freak me out. Technology has gotten a little bit out of hand, and that is a little bit of what's touched on in this. And maybe some people's fears and neuroses with these types of cars that have too much power. But anyways, guys, that was it for Locked. Everybody take it easy. Have a fantastic weekend, and I will be back before you know it. Later.